Hello, everybody. So I was just getting, as usual, getting my stuff together there, trying to organize the last few bits. But I said I'd just go live rather than keep you waiting. I hope you're all well. Hope you're all doing well. So you know what I'm going to talk about tonight. I'm talking about a controversial Minister for Children, Roderic O'Gorman, and most of the news that most of you, I think, know already. Let me know if I'm coming through okay, by the way. But yeah. The big kind of, I don't know, the dam broke on it today. He commented on it online and the media responded, etc. I suppose I want to avoid telling you things you know, because most of you know that, and more just give my opinion on a lot of it. Someone says no video. Yeah, no video. There might be a little bit in a while. I've downloaded some bits and I can share those, but yeah, it's interesting. Like my headline for my title for the video and what I wrote on Twitter and stuff is a little bit like, you could say it's tongue in cheek, but it's kind of getting at a point. Is like I said on Twitter, I said as if it's like a newspaper headline: corporate media and politicians lambaste public for anti-pedo concerns. And that's basically what has happened here. I mean, again, I'll go through the articles. I kind of skimmed over one this morning, and the rest I didn't look at because I want to kind of do that now. But I get the gist already. And it's like, it is just a kind of this, it is like my satirical line there isn't too far wrong, though. It is a kind of a lambasting. They say of anonymous, faceless far-right trolls and all of that. And it's like, it's a fine line between anonymous, faceless online, obscure trolls on the internet and, faceless, unwashed masses, like what it's basically saying the same thing, because it's like someone has to be, even if we do go with the line of like, even if they want to call me a keyboard warrior type of thing, that kind of accusation, it's like, well, yeah, like, I mean, when I write stuff on the internet, yeah, I use a keyboard. I'm not anonymous, but I get what you're trying to suggest. Oh, you're on your computer saying things or something like that. It's like, well, yeah, you were on your computer when you wrote the article and like someone published it, right? On the online space. That's what you did. And so when you say, and even the anonymous people, the people who are anonymous online, who are commenting on, a lot of people are anonymous of all persuasions online. That's kind of normal online. It's not like they don't have a face. They have a face. They're online. You could criticize if someone's anonymous, that's fine, but they do have a face. It's calling people faceless is it's very ugly kind of thing in a way. Especially for politicians, it does reek of calling people faceless, unwashed masses. Oh, them and their concerns and their criticisms of our politician. How dare they? Again, it's another dynamic where I'm looking at it going to power, or it's another situation where I'm looking at the power dynamic and how topsy-turvy it is and how arrogant they are. And they're going, these people criticizing him, this is a hate campaign, this is muckraking, this is whatever. One of the things that I can't escape thinking about is how, if they were to know your job and they were to take your online post, oh, you once posted this one time where you said this thing, and take the worst possible characterization of it and stuff like that, they would have you fired from your job for quote unquote racism, fired from your job, destitute, blackballed, ostracized over something where they painted in the worst possible light and they printed everywhere, and they get an NGO in as a, like, we have an expert in to say how bad it is what he said, and they do the whole 9 yards on it, right, and destroy you, and no ordinary person, like, everyday citizen, and not bat an eyelid. These same people who are going, this is you're just digging things up from the past and you're putting a kind of negative spin on it a little bit, and you're just being very bad. It's like, I wouldn't even mind if they had a track record where that came across as sincere, but it's like, I know you fucking assholes. Excuse my language, lad, sorry. But I know you, like, I know and there's no principle on which you're basing your dislike of, or your displeasure here. It's not based on a principle. It's based on the people who are inside the gates of the castle, or outside the gates of the castle, so to speak, or outside the kind of, I don't know, like the Mott and Bailey, whatever analogy. It's like you are regime people. Roderic is one of your regime leaders, literally in this case. And you can't handle a bunch of people online going for the metaphorical jugular, in the sense that, like, people are saying what he has done is really bad. He must resign, or he must mea culpa, or whatever, or explain, all that kind of stuff, right? The public are not allowed to do that on this issue. You are not allowed, and it's so obvious. Someone says protest Saturday. Yes, protest at 1 o'clock, 12 o'clock. Show up at 12, and then kind of going there from 1 o'clock outside the Dáil this Saturday, the 11th. I'll be there. I will see you there. But yeah, it's one of the starkest examples I've come across yet of this kind of regime mechanization here, where it kind of the transformer machine kind of unfurls itself and does its thing, and you get to watch all the parts kind of, the pneumatics and stuff just kind of, operate. You're like, well, that is the machine at its work there. You can really see its maneuvering. And here's why, is because this has been going for about a week now, this controversy. And the media have just stayed dead silent. And if anybody, I don't care whether it's like, it's not even like whether you're pro or anti Roderic O'Gorman, whether you think his associations are extremely damning, whether you think they're forgivable, whether you're left, right, up, down, all that. Doesn't matter actually what you believe. But I want you to agree with me on one thing, surely, is that regardless of your opinion on the substance of the issue yourself, people differ on that. You will get a variety, a range of opinions on that. That's fine. But regardless of that, is it not astoundingly remarkable that this controversy has been raging for a week, like unavoidable online? Everybody knew of it, right? Everybody across the board. Anyone online, anyone in media, anyone at all like that, right? Knew about this. And yet the media held their collective tongues. That alone is an issue. Is that they all held their tongues, as in that's a bad analogy. They did not hold their tongues. They held back. They blackout. And then he posts a thing on Twitter today, and they all have their article ready. And then you see them online complaining. All of them. We'll go through the articles, but they're all like, Minister slams criticism, this kind of stuff, right? Like completely press releases for him, 100%. It's not like 5 of them were slavish, slobbering press releases for him. 5 of them were that, and there was 2 of them that took a more critical approach, and one that more looked at it from our point of view, let's say my point of view, a little bit more skeptical and grilling of the Minister for Children. So 5 are slobbering over him, and then 2 are more critical. If that were the situation, I would be coming on tonight telling you that that's a disgrace, that you have 5-2. I would go, that's an awful uniformity in the media. And that's horrible that the bias leans towards power 5-2. That's awful. I would be telling you that. I would be basically making the same point in a way. But it's way worse than that. It's all 7 or it's all 5. However, I'm talking about total uniformity, totality on this. Except for the Liberal, they're kind of exceptional. They've been reporting on this consistently for the past few days. But if we can kind of slightly exclude them, I mean, we can include them as one, maybe, I suppose. They're a very big publication. But them aside, it's complete uniformity. And we'll have to go through the articles to see how glaring this is. I mean, just to give you a taste, there was one I haven't actually looked into these yet. The Irish Sun. Well, I'll come back to it. This is only going to be for a sec. And Gripped. I see Gripped as well. Yes, indeed. Gripped were good on this too. Or at least they were, reasonable and kind of doing their job effectively. The Sun. It says, trolls slammed. Children's Minister Roderic O'Gorman slams online attacks against him, which he says are, quote, rooted in homophobia. So anyway, we'll come back to it in a sec. I just want to give some more preliminary thoughts. Is that like, you know, he couldn't write these. It is literally like his press team wrote these verbatim, and there's no question of like, okay, well, this association, like for example, here's one thing he said. Kira Kelly, I'm seeing Kira Kelly mentioned. She was skeptical of the Minister for Children as well. But again, this is a minority of 2 or 3 people, in a way. I mean, the point very much stands, obviously. I know you're just trying to give credit where it's due as well, but where was I going? I do look at the chat and get distracted sometimes. I'm gone. Bye, lads. No, I'm thinking of Simon Coveney, for one, to take one example, right? He came out with this, let me find it. He came out with this thing of like, it's these horrible anonymous trolls and blah, 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 which is a sentiment shared by much of the media themselves. They've come out and said it on their personal Twitter accounts. And I replied to Simon Coveney, sorry. I said, "We're not faceless, Simon, you weasel." But what I was replying to, he said, he's replying to Roderic O'Gorman, like, "You okay, hun?" type of thing. He says, "Try to ignore faceless trolls with nasty agendas. They have unfortunately become part of politics. It's been a difficult few days for you, but it will pass. You'll be a great Minister for Children and colleague in government. I'm looking forward to working with you." Again, the vibe among people like him and others is kind of like that these people doing this are awful online actors of some description, bad actors, as they would say. And it's kind of like there's this implication of kind of like Russian bots. Like, no one has said Russian bots, but like the same thing that comes to mind when you consider Russian bots, kind of like not actually part of society in any way, not organic to wider society at all, completely separate and cloistered and unrelated in any way to society. It is behind some kind of shadowy curtain, other place type of thing, right? And that's what they're trying to imply. And I'm going, okay, if we agreed that that's what they're trying to imply, I don't think I'm being, controversial. I think we can agree on that much. I mean, I think if I were to ask Simon Coveney, he'd be like, if I were to ask him that question straight up, I'd be like, "Is that what you're implying?" He'd be like, "Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that's what I'm implying." Like, it's not vague. But thing about that is, I'm going, okay, so something that's completely unrelated to anything, effectively, anything normal in society, normal people's concerns and opinions on this matter. So if it's just me and you, let's say it's you in the chat and it's me, and that's the end of the story. We're the ones stirring and doing and provoking and stoking and spewing and all that kind of stuff, right? Well, I mean, I must be very important. I feel really good because I get like, you and I, lads, get 6, 7 newspaper articles, headline kind of things. We get the Taoiseach being questioned on, that Neil Prendeville is another example. He did good. So again, he's another one in the minority. But you have the Taoiseach being questioned on it. The Taoiseach, right? If you're not Irish, that's the Prime Minister, the leader, main guy, being questioned on the radio this morning. Now, for a bunch of nobodies who were completely unconnected to public sentiment, we've done really well, haven't we? We're really important. I say that kind of sardonically because what I really mean is that this isn't just us. It's not just me. It's not just you. It's not faceless online Russian spies or something like that, right? No, it's a lot of the public. We're looking at this going, WTF is going on? And I want they were kind of like, it's one thing, the association of this Roderic O'Gorman guy. People have varying views on how bad that is, let's say, but they go, what's extra weird about it, they go, okay, the original thing is one thing, but you're telling me it's been 4 days, it's been all over the place, and he hasn't said anything. And people like Hazel Chew are calling all the people who have concerns homophobic and racist and terrible Nazis, whatever, right? It's like, ordinary people were going, what's going on? And they go, so he's pictured next to the guy. He's celebrating the guy, blah, blah, blah. He's one of the same guys who wants hate speech laws. I haven't looked into it in detail. Sorry, lads. I'll spend the week doing this. I'm going to spend the week on kind of sex ed, that kind of stuff. It's like correct me if I'm wrong, right? He's in on this kind of, I don't know, global, whatever, you know what I'm saying? Education regime, this weird sex ed stuff, and like drag queen story hour and LGBT blah blah blah, right? This stuff that like, and I'll tell you, I've said this to you before, but I was in the anti-new world sex ed, the kind of hyper extreme sex ed program. I was in a meeting in Castleknock. I just showed up at it like just to see, in a pub on a random half rainy night in Castleknock in Dublin, which is just pure, and it wasn't like the mad posh side of Castleknock. So it was a pure just slice of average society. It totally was like, an evening. People are busy in evenings. Usually they just watch telly, they're tired or whatever. But no, it was a random weekday evening, kind of, as they would say, a soft kind of night, right? And the night you'd want to stay in. And yet, in this pub, I walked in and it was one of these large pubs, not a quaint little pub, a big, big pub with like loads of little areas and stuff like that, right? The entire thing was full. The biggest part of it was jammers. I walked in and I had to stand shoulder to shoulder with people, right? Jammers with parents, people, ordinary, totally ordinary society. I went in, this was not any kind of specific political people of any kind, right? It was jammers. I've rarely seen anything like it. Only other time I've seen it is the asylum thing. And I know that energy, and they were all there going, and they were saying, I'm telling you, there were literally normal people in like, the jacket and the kind of, the jacket and the out, like a totally ordinary man, non-remarkable, and he's not weird or he's not odd or he's not political or any of that. And yet there are these people standing there talking about the march through the institutions. I'm going, what the hell is going on here? Like, wow. They were talking about the march through the institutions, this agenda. They don't like it, blah, blah, blah. Someone says they're going to bed. Good night, Ihoa. Have a good sleep. But it's like, again, it's this kind of concern about like this weird sex ed stuff, drag queen story hour, kids learning about like, I don't know, even gay relationships when they're like 6 and stuff like that. It's like they don't need to, and most parents don't want them to. Most parents who go, I'm not homophobic at all, but they go, yeah, but I don't want my kid learning that stuff. Just let my kid be a kid. If they grow up to be, 16 and we kind of get the vibe that they're gay, they can be gay, like, whatever. But like, it, best of luck. But it's like, but in the meantime, can we just teach them maths and birds and the bees and stuff like that? The majority of parents are in that spot. Make no mistake. And so when they see that, okay, the Minister for Education, who's into all this, I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, etc., who's into all of this drag queen story hour, radical sex ed kind of program for people who are too young to be hearing about changing their gender and all this stuff, a guy who's that, and a guy who's hate speechy and mad progressive and all this stuff, right? A guy who's already like that, who's already tempting us to be concerned, let's say, concerned with a big C, right? A guy who's already tempting us to be concerned about this kind of agenda, then on top of it turns out to have this association. One alone would be fine. The association on its own, isolated, might be fine. The kind of political agenda Roderic is pushing through alone, parents might kind of turn a blind eye to it. But both together they go, okay, it's the combination of things. We just generally have a concern, and we'd like it if this guy who we pay could come out immediately and say, hey guys, I've no truck with that kind of point of view, right? Immediately, first day, just like I start, as they say, stirring up hate and all this kind of stuff. I start whatever online. Roderic replies, he just goes, yeah, I have no truck with that kind of stuff. I didn't know about that point of view, but I definitely, I just, no, obviously not. Obviously, immediately, it's the contempt that was shown for a week of this, and then coming out to call it all far right. And he's not just called, I know he'd call me far right, even though I'm totally not. I'm a centrist, moderate journalist. But I know he'd call me that, and I'm used to that, but he's calling a kind of by proxy all of the other people who go, I'm concerned about this Tatchell guy, and you've been spotted with him a lot, as in like you weren't just in a picture with him. We'll get onto that too. You know, ordinary Joe Mary blogs, right? And he's in the paper scolding them. I'm telling you now, lads. I'm telling you, I'm not wrong in my title and stuff, and in my Twitter thing of like, you know, John B says Garrod is the new Sargon. Just cut that out. Yeah, I'm not going to block you, but honestly, please, like, please, I'm not that bad, am I? But I know I try to keep things a little bit mild and stuff, but I'm not that bad. Yeah, it's like he's calling them all far right, and basically, like I said in my Twitter thing, it's not an exaggeration. Media and politicians scold public for anti-pedo concerns. It's like, what are you scolding us for? Like, why don't you just come out and say, yeah, you know, make it clear and do that straight away? And I think the time that went by kind of makes his mea culpa. He didn't even do a mea culpa, but just having a sip of tea there. It makes it kind of too little too late, in my opinion. It'd be one thing if he came out and said, I understand, guys, I understand. I totally, like, that's what you're meant to do. Like, you know, you're meant to come out and go, like, you should come out after we can go, okay, there's a section of the public who are concerned about this, who are have just as much rights as any other section of the public, you know, like there's the LGBT lobby, and there's the feminists, and there's the Catholics, and there's the, I don't know, the farmers, and this and that, and then there's all sorts of other little subdivisions, right? But it's like, you know, just like any portion of society or people with an opinion, they deserve public representation, you know, and a little bit of accountability and responsiveness. So he should have come out and said, I took a week there. Let me explain why. It's not your fault. I know you had concerns. I understand some stuff. He could even say some stuff was said that I don't think is true at all, and you know, it's exaggerated and spun a bit. And I wouldn't mind if he did that. The guy was entitled to kind of defend himself in a way, but it's like, but just to say, yeah, that's understandable, and I, you know, just disavow Thatcher, and don't make excuses for him. No bullshit. But we'll get onto it. I suppose we will. I suppose I can do a screenshot now, actually, or not a screenshot, but a screen share. Bear with me. Bear with me with an ER or an ARE. I'm not sure, but we'll get there. Okay, join me on a journey here of screen share. And also, so I'm going to ask you to join me on screen share, and I'm also going to ask you to forgive me. So I need you to join me and forgive me, because I have a whole photo album here of just things that piqued my interest today. And I put them in a file, but the order, I don't know what the order is. So I don't know. Let's pick things out at random. So maybe we should go to the, let's go to the articles first. I'm sorry about it, lads. I'm sorry about it. I'm going to read you the articles first, and let's just get that out of the way. Okay. Now my camera is up and I'm wearing a funny hat. I'm going to turn that off. Okay, so I knew it would happen. But I want to read these articles out. Let's just go through them. Headlines, let's not read them too deeply. I'll do a bit here and there, but there's like 6 of them. The Journal. Children's Minister rejects, quote, homophobic online claims, linking him to comments about paedophilia. And we'll just... Yeah. Great stuff. Children's Minister Roderic O'Gorman toxic Twitter accusations. The Sun, the one I read to you a while ago, trolls slam children's Minister O'Gorman slams online attacks against him, which he says are, quote, rooted in homophobia. And then there's the version. The new Children's Minister Roderic O'Gorman slams toxic and, quote, homophobic attacks against him. So you get the idea. It's unreal, unbelievable. Like, the headlines kind of say it all. And they include bits of his statement as well. And then the Irish Times, written by our dear friend Sorka Pollock, whatever. Minister for Children condemns, quote, homophobic attacks from the, quote, far right. Someone says there's no sound. Did my sound go away? Let me know. Someone said my sound was gone there. No sound. I mean, are you? Oh, I'm roboting. Okay. Yeah, such is life. Okay, I'm back. Sorry, lads. By the way, I in case I haven't said it before, I do apologize for this. I am just living it up in a nice location, as in I'm in a place I'm happy with for a while. It's not really long term. At least for now. Anyway, but it's just something I'm dealing with for a while. The audio comes and goes. It's usually fine for the most part. So, I don't know. It's just unbelievable. Like, the fact that we waited for coverage for so long, and then all within like 2 hours, this comes out. Like, we're like, oh, and it's just this. It's just like, I often will say, oh, this is like a press release for so and so, but this is taking the piss. I mean, you have what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 6 I'm aware of. They're all the big hitters, so to speak, even though they're not very big, but they have a certain amount of prestige. The Irish Times and all that kind of stuff. All of them. It's so stark and it's so obvious. And again, I have examples. It's like, someone I saw someone saying like, oh, so you're saying it's insignificant that he was just in a picture with the guy. Some people were going, yeah, I get it. Fair enough. Tatchell might be controversial and, unsavory, let's say, but he was just in a picture with him. And I was saying, okay, again, back to the racism analogy, right? What if, say, I don't know, Micheál Martin was pictured a few years ago at a heritage demonstration, International Heritage Festival, and he was pictured next to David Duke, and he kind of held a banner with him and took a picture. But not only did Micheál Martin do that, he also tweeted out, "Delighted to be here at the Heritage Festival with the great David Duke," or something like that, right? And it's like, okay, so that was ages ago and that was just a picture. I'd go, okay, well, same analogy then, the David Duke one, tweeting it out. Would that be insignificant because of the fact that it's just a picture and just a tweet? And obviously, I said that to someone on Twitter. They, needless to say, didn't reply. But it's like, I hate to argue on behalf of someone else, but it's like they would, if I were to say, are you saying that would be insignificant? They would go, their answer would have to be, no, obviously that would be significant, but that's different. That'd be their answer effectively in some form, right? No, that in that case, it would be significant, but that's different. And it's like, so what you're saying is that the scale of the association, i.e. it being a picture and a tweet, the quantitative scale of the association isn't the thing you're saying is insignificant. You're saying it's the qualitative nature of the association, which hence leads us back to saying comments about lowering the age of consent and children getting great joy from being raped at the age of 9 are less problematic, to use that kind of language, than a guy who says white identity, Jews, X, Y, and Z, whatever, right? You're saying that pedo dirt is insignificant, but racism dirt is significant. So you're basically saying that one is more important than the other. It's very revealing, that is what I'm trying to say. And and I will get into the articles. I know I'm kind of taking things in a strange order. So let's read the Irish Times one. Let's just go for it. Roderic O'Gorman alleges misinformation campaign about child protection issues. Minister for Children Roderic O'Gorman says he has become the victim. Very good start. And by the way, Sorcha Pollock, whatever. She is one of the people who co-wrote this article, smearing me up and down the fucking, excuse my language again, smearing me left, right, and center, right? As in, like, it was like a article you would write as a satire of a smear article. You'd have to read it for yourself, like. But it's like a satire, you know. It's not like, oh, that's a bit of a smear, that's a little bit rough on you, that one. You know, I think they put a little bit of a slant on you there. No, it was preposterous, right? Same person who wrote that. I'm kind of going, okay, so I have to imagine the way she's talking about Roderic O'Gorman here is if it's basically this. It's like if someone, you know, if some politician was found to have said X, Y, and Z group, religious or ethnic, are cockroaches, they should be this, that, and the other. I have to be careful because the YouTube algorithm might not know that I'm being hypothetical here. But, you know, if some politician had said so and so are cockroaches and should be so and so'd, and, you know, it wouldn't be, or if they said, I'm not saying it should happen, but it wouldn't be a bad thing for the world, or, you know, something like that, right? Some kind of thing that's like universally most people would go, oh, that's very bad, you know, or whatever. It'd be like that person who said that, it comes out, all of the kind of, you know, shit libs raise a big stink about it, and a lot of the public do hear it and kind of go, well, that is bad what he said there, that's mean, that's bad, that's quasi-genocidal and weird, right? And then that person who has been found to have said that or had associations with people who say that, something like that, it's like that person then gets an article with Sorcha Pollock, and she says, let's say the person who's been exposed as having said this cockroach analogy, let's say his name is John, right? Let's just say. Sorcha Pollock starts the article saying, Minister for Children John so-and-so says he has become the victim of a far-left social media pylon by groups using misinformation to play on concerns about so-called racism. It would be like if she said that, right? That, imagine, you know, and so imagine that you go to her and you get this like complete defense. Speaking following a week of social media attacks on his views, he's being attacked. He's a victim. All the language. I don't want to give her credit too much. I mean, she's as good as like this stuff as anyone else is. Let's put it that way. It's not hard once you get used to it, you know. Speaking following a week of social media attacks on his views around the age of consent, an accusation of associating with an alleged, quote, paedophile apologist, Mr. O'Gorman said the protection of the most vulnerable remained his central focus as a politician. The minister said there was a definite homophobic element to the abuse he was receiving, and that his predecessor, Catherine Zappone, had been subjected to similar attacks for being gay and because she didn't have children. I mean, I don't know. I don't see that as too obscure. Attack, like, let's remove the word attack from the equation. Let's just call it criticism. Criticism, or comments, or, you know, noting that she doesn't have children, she's a minister for children. I mean, is that so wrong to say? You know, is that not relevant? Like someone could have no children and be a good minister for our children, I suppose, in theory. But it's a thing for people to bring up. It's like you're a minister for farming and you've never set foot on a farm, you know, or, you know, it's like you wouldn't say, how dare you say that? You'd be like, fair criticism, but, you know, I've done my research on farms and it's okay. But you wouldn't dismiss the criticism. You'd say, no, I mean, I understand why you'd say that, obviously. But no, it's arrogance from all these people. You know, they're aghast at all this criticism. The Green Party Lord Mayor of Dublin, Hazel Chew, has also been subjected to online attacks around race, said Mr. O'Gorman. They're all like doing the "you okay" hunt for each other thing, and kind of, it's very funny. It's an attempt by the far right to silence people from minorities and to suppress difference. Whatever. They'll use whatever they can to undermine those who seek to stand up to their agenda, but it certainly isn't going to work with me. Big man. I mean, I don't even know what to say. Whatever. Sorry to be like glib about it. He described the accusation as quick, but that the information being spread could become, quote, really damaging. Oh man. It could become really damaging. You're right. Now, why would you agree that it could become really damaging? Again, we'll get onto it because I'm vaguely familiar with what's been said today. Is he's kind of half like saying, "Oh, I disavow those views of Peter Tatchell, but I also don't know if he has all of those views." He kind of says he didn't, and I think we'll get onto it. He says something like, "If I had known about those statements attributed to Mr. Tatchell, I think I wouldn't have taken that picture, probably." That kind of stuff, right? But it's like, okay, so if it's so ridiculous and all that, then how could it be really damaging? Again, I can't just come out. I can't. You underestimate the public, sir. Or he pretends to anyway, because it's like, I couldn't get away with just coming out and saying Micheál Martin, or even to pick a gay politician, if that's what you think it is. Leo Varadkar is gay too, right? I couldn't just come out and say Leo Varadkar associated to this pedo advocate type of thing, and la 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 la, and let's everybody get annoyed about it. Whatever. I couldn't do that because people would be like, I mean, what were you working with here? Like, people are to a certain point skeptical. Even people who kind of will agree with you a bit, they'll go, I mean, I'm not just going to go on some witch hunt here. I'm not going to dust off my pitchfork for just anything. It's like, you have to, like, if I'm going to be annoyed about this thing, it needs to actually be true, or at least, even if you're putting a little bit of a hype on it, it has to be largely true and based on something that is fundamentally true, or a fundamental truth. They don't. That's just, I'm a person who does do a bit of activism and a bit of awareness raising and all that, and I can tell you that from the heart. You can't work with nothing. You just can't. So I think he kind of is passively acknowledging it there, passively acknowledging it. He cautioned that the information being spread could become really damaging. It can only become really damaging if it's based on something. No smoke without fire, etc. And it could only become really damaging if it crossed over from the online world into the normie world, or the public, which it kind of has. But it couldn't gain a critical mass of public outrage without it being kind of real. I'm just being honest with you here. I'm talking about grassroots outrage here. O'Gorman has been criticised in recent days for marching alongside British LGBT rights campaigner Peter Tatchell at Dublin Pride's March 2 years ago. In 1997, in a letter to the Guardian, Mr. Tatchell controversially wrote that some of his friends had made a, quote, conscious choice to have sex with an adult when they were under the age of 13. He said 9 to 13 now. So don't lie to us about the 9 now. Tell us 9. Because it did say from 9 to 13. And he said, while it may be impossible to condone paedophilia, it may be impossible. He didn't say it is impossible. While it's impossible to condone. I'm telling you, I didn't even know this, because I knew there was a kind of a quote where he said something to the effect of like, I don't condone and whatever, but I didn't know he used this language. I'm telling you, like, while it may be impossible, why is it impossible? That sounds to me like it's impossible to, it's 20 miles outside the Overton window. Impossible. I think it feels like that's the implication there. While it may be impossible to condone pedophilia, just say it's impossible to condone pedophilia. This is in the context of the other stuff around Tatchell, by the way. If this was the only thing he'd ever said related to the topic, and I were being hyper analytical of the words and the grammar, not the grammar, the words, I would understand someone going, "You're being a bit of an obsessive here and like taking it the worst way." I would understand that, but this is totally not the only thing swimming around Peter Tatchell. And I've been looking today at some of his kind of denials, and he does the whole thing of like, "Oh, poor me, I'm being attacked," very well. But he's been getting accused of this for years. Now, being accused of things doesn't mean you're guilty of something by itself, but it's not meaningless either. And then you add it to the book he wrote a chapter in. I suppose I could just show you I suppose I could just show you a screenshot there, shouldn't I? Let me see. I have it down here somewhere. No, it's the boy thing. Bear with me, lads. Yeah, betrayal of youth. So there we go. Let me do a screen share for you. So, this is from a book that was published, I think, by Pedophile Information Exchange people, and it's called Betrayal of Youth, BOY, boy. Part 1, 5 controversial areas. Chapter 1, incest by Clive Coleman. Chapter 2, child pornography and erotica by Richard Green. Chapter 3, child prostitution by so and so. Chapter 4, gender differences. Chapter 5, power and consent. Chapter 6, Love and Let Love by Tuppy Owens and Tom O'Carroll. Tom O'Carroll, infamously a leading guy in the Pedophile Information Exchange. Children and Sex, a child counselor's view, etc. And then we get down to just to cut to the chase here, chapter 9, questioning ages of majority and ages of consent by Peter Tatchell. And again, his thing on that is something along the lines of I was tricked into writing a chapter to be included in that book. It's something along the lines of I was like asked to write about something, and I didn't actually condone pedophilia in that chapter that I wrote per se. And also I didn't know what the chapter I was being asked to write, I didn't know what book it was intended for. And someone can remind me in the chat. I honestly don't even like delving too deep into this stuff or dwelling on it, but he what's his name? It's a guy from I know some of the usuals here are watching. Hopefully you could tell me. He's the guy who Tatchell had a friendship with for years, related to the Pedophile Information Exchange. That guy. There's a guy, call him John McCarthy if you want to, right? Someone in the chat will let us know. The point is there's a guy, a Pedophile Information Exchange guy, who he gave a big eulogy for at his funeral, and he was a good friend of and all that kind of stuff. And that guy, he's like, I never knew he advocated for pedophilia. I never knew he was a member of the Pedophile Information Exchange. I wrote this chapter of a book by accident. I also said in a letter to The Guardian about, children from the age of 9 can get great joy from sex with adults, which is, under anyone's definition, rape. Children can get great joy from it, but they edited my letter. Now, I never sued them. I never sued them for retraction there. Yes. But they did edit my letter. Not quite sure which bit specifically they edited exactly. But they edited it. I never sued them for defamation, which, of course you would if it was egregiously wrong and mischaracterizing you would just go take that down. If any of you woke up in the morning and Irish Times said so-and-so is, advocates for 9-year-olds to have sex with adults, you'd go, well, that's the easiest lawsuit in the world. I'd take it down. But that didn't happen with the Guardian letter. And then he's like, well, I said, that I know people who have gotten great joy from it, but I said, while it may be impossible to condone, pedophilia. It's like, how many of these things have to kind of happen? Like where you kind of have an out on each of them, as not that you actually don't really have outs, but you have a kind of you have some kind of excuse or rationalization, right? You know, I was friends with this guy, good friends with this guy who was a big pedophile information exchange guy, and I'm an activist and he's an activist. So it's one thing if it was like, it's one thing if it was Mary Murphy. She works in the local shop and she's got a friend, a guy who works, and he says he's a journalist or an activist for LGBT. And he comes into the shop every day and they chat. And then sometimes they go for coffee and they talk about everything and whatever. And then years later, she finds out he was actually in, not only was he the LGBT activist guy, but actually above and beyond that, he was in this thing called the pedophile information exchange. If it was this Mary Murphy who just knew him through the shop kind of thing, you'd go, I mean, how's she going to know that, right? She's his friend in a kind of a way, but in a totally separate world. Ian Dunn, I'm being told his name is that guy. But unlike the shopkeeper, the girl who's friends with him from the shop, Peter Tatchell is a dyed-in-the-wool activist, right? Now, activist, journalist, any of these kind of people are all about information, all about who's who, what's what, right? So it's just very, I find it very, you know, wanting. To me, I just go, okay, so you didn't know this guy who was your friend. You're an activist, he's an activist, you didn't know. And also the Guardian edited your thing, but you didn't sue them. And also you said, and before you said the thing that looks very much like pedo apologism, you said, well, it may be impossible to condone, and all of this kind of stuff. What's the other one? There was another one to start with. I don't know. There's 3 or 4 biggies like that, right? And there's probably more I'm not quite aware of at the moment. There always are like a few more. But it's like, how you know, how far do we have to go? And I have written down here on a post-it as a note for myself tonight. Yeah, just take a few notes. So I do. And I just have a little note here that says, can we cut the bullshit? Simple as. I'm just saying, I mean, please, can we cut the bullshit? Because it's just annoying. I know there isn't a single there isn't like a clip where Peter Tatchell is on video looking straight into the camera saying, I'm just going to take that screen share off for a second, or I suppose I could leave it up, but no, I can't actually, sorry lads. There isn't a bit where you'll find Peter Tatchell looking straight at the camera saying, I, Peter Tatchell, am a pedophile apologist. No doubt about it. Advocate for it. You know, working on it. Always my true feeling and my agenda at some level always has been the normalization of pedophilia and the deconstruction of all laws and social mores and taboos against child-adult sexual relations. I, Peter Tatchell. Make no mistake, this isn't a hallucination I'm having. There is no excuse. There is no anything. It is my opinion. And say it every day, right? No, we don't have that on Peter Tatchell. Of course, right? Of course. There's no evidence of that. But it's like, you know, like, do you know what it's like? And I keep bringing it back to the racism thing, because it's like, it's kind of like if someone said, I think X and Y group are cockroaches and should be XYZ id, right? And I think there's a scourge, and I think our society is run by so-and-so, and I think all these hordes of invaders and blah, 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 right? You know, think of the most like get you in trouble type of lines you could possibly have, the most unoptical lines you could have when you're talking about race from a kind of a nationalist, Western nationalist point of view, you know, that kind of thing. Think of the most unoptical, you know, unfortunate ways of putting things that you could possibly put them. Damning, you could say. And you've been, in different instances over the years, you said it in an article to a newspaper, you this, that, and the other. Your best buddy was David Duke. I sorry to like use David Duke as a kind of a, you know, to like a whipping boy here as an example or whatever, but like, you know, he's an infamous or kind of so-called racist type of thing or whatever, right? You know, if there is anyone known as a racist, it's David Duke, you know, or Richard Spencer or whoever, right? And it's like, yeah, I said all that stuff about cockroaches, and I said all this stuff about so and so should be so and so. I don't want to go on with it, but you get me. I said all that, and I also for a long time was very dear friends publicly with David Duke and all that. And you have the recordings of me saying stuff, and you have the articles that where I said X, Y, and Z. However, when I said the thing about cockroaches, I said, now I'm not racist, but followed on by the cockroaches comment. No, I'm totally not racist. I think it's impossible to condone racism, but I do think so and so are cockroaches. And like I say, you've done that, and you've also been a known friend of David Duke's, and you just come out every time and say, I mean, like, I know all these things are there. I know you have all these examples that you're pointing at me saying, I mean, we all know so-and-so's, I don't want to say the words myself. We all know so-and-so's a racist. You're saying I'm that. But let me tell you, I condemn racism. Boom. Boom. Public media opinion owned. You neutralized it all. I completely, I've never said I condone racism. In fact, I condemn it to the highest degree possible. Now, I can't explain what I said about the cockroaches and my friendship with so-and-so and the fact that I keep repeatedly saying this stuff, right? But let me tell you, I ain't no racist, right? It's like, would that be, let's slide. And then Micheál Martin comes out and hangs out with this guy. People criticize Micheál Martin, and then he says, all right. Or Sorka says, okay, no bother. He's being attacked. He is being attacked. It's bullshit. It's just complete bollocks, basically, is what I'm saying. So where were we on the article? It's just the fact that they go through the accusations against Tatchell. People are saying he is a pedophile apologist, right? People are saying that, and they're going, well, now let's drill into what he said. He said he's not. So this is all a big attack on. Ergo, it's a big attack on Roderic O'Gorman because Tatchell kind of denies it. It's just such bullshit. Yeah. Jack Torrance says, tiptoe much. Who are we talking about? We're talking about me. Suppose I needn't get into it. Tiptoe much. Tiptoe much, says Jack Torrance. Cool. So in a 1997 letter to The Guardian, Mr. Tatchell controversially wrote that some of his friends had made a conscious choice. Yeah. Well, it may be impossible to condone. Okay, we saw that. Not all sex involving children is unwanted, abusive, and harmful. Most normal people thoroughly disagree with that. Anyway, Mr. Tatchell has since claimed the letter was edited and said sex with children is impossible to condone. Again, it's like he said so-and-so about cockroaches. He's friends with David Duke. Now he did, but what he says is he didn't know David Duke was involved in identitarian, quote-unquote, racist activism, and that he condemns racism. It's all grand. He says, this means I condemn it. He said in a tweet posted last week, I oppose adults having sex with children. Let's go on with it. Mr. O'Gorman said on Monday that Dublin Pride was the, quote, first and only time he met Mr. Tatchell. Asked if he knew of the 1997 letter before Pride, the Green Party minister said he did not. Very good. Very okay. I had no idea about the letter, he says. Had I read it straight before the march, this is it. See, this is it. This is where he, after a whole week, sorry, I will kind of cut to the chase here a little bit. This is the crux of it. He spends a whole week hiding, And then he comes out and attacks everybody for being skeptical of it or concerned about it as far-right, racist, terrible homophobes or whatever, right? And then when it comes to the crunch, strip all of that away. The important thing is all along is like, do you unequivocally condemn this, right? Or are you going to beat around the bush? And here we go. I had no idea about the letter. Had I read it straight before the march, I probably, sorry, I really ate the mic there to say that. I hope I'm not kind of giving you feedback or like, what's the word? Just a crappy noise. What's the word again? Gain kind of sound. Yeah. Had I read it straight before the march, I probably would have reconsidered taking a photo with him. I absolutely don't share his views on those points, and I'm glad he's since clarified exactly what he meant there. Now, what's that about? I would probably have reconsidered. I mean, okay. Honestly, take a position, right? Take a position. If you wouldn't have reconsidered taking the photo with him because you don't think it's a thing, which you clearly don't care, you agree with Tatchell, it seems, or you at least, I don't want to say that because I don't want to, don't sue me. I can't say you agree with him. You can say otherwise. That's fine. I don't know. None of us know. But it seems you like Tatchell. Seems you're a fan. You're a fellow traveler. Seems that way, doesn't it? Right? I don't think he even denies it. It's like, I probably would have reconsidered. If you wouldn't have reconsidered and you think this is bullshit and everybody's attacking you and he's actually fine and it's all a homophobic made up thing, if that's what you think, which you're implying, then have the balls and say, no, I wouldn't have reconsidered it. I'd take a photo with him again. That's what I'm saying. Because that's what it seems like you feel. Then say it. Just say it. I was going to say it, motherfucker. I don't know why that came into my head, but he's certainly not that. But had I read it straight before the march, I probably would have reconsidered it. Just say you wouldn't have reconsidered it. Just say it, and that's the thing. If we're so bad and you're so good, then you say what you really think, and let us ask the public what they think. You don't have the balls for that. You can only muddy the water and obfuscate. So who's the real bullshitter and who's the real misinformation purveyor? Me or you? And then I absolutely don't share his views on those points, right? So I don't share his views on those points. Think about this. I don't share his views on those points. But at the same time, I'm glad that he's since clarified exactly what he meant. Well, it's vague enough that I can't say anything certainly on it. But what he's saying is like, Tatchell clarified his point. Here's what it seems like to me. I don't want to put words in Roderic's poor mouth here, right? There's enough going on in there. But he clarified his views. I'm glad he clarified his views. Is the kind of thing like of, he clarified in that like the letter was misattributed. I didn't know so-and-so was in the pedophile information exchange. And when I wrote the chapter in the book, I didn't know what book I was writing the chapter for, which Tatchell claims wipes the slate clean and makes it so that there's really nothing to see here. That's Tatchell's position on it, right? About himself, obviously. And his kind of defenders will say that too. So according to Tatchell, his clarification makes it all null and void. So does Roderic agree that Tatchell's clarifications, does Roderic agree with Tatchell that Tatchell's clarification makes it so that there's nothing to see here? Because that's what Tatchell thinks. Tatchell thinks his own clarification means I'm not in any way related to any kind of pedophile advocacy. That's what Tatchell would say. Does Roderic agree with Tatchell's his self point of view on this, or does he disagree? Does Roderic think no? Peter Tatchell's clarification does not actually explain these things away. But then at the same time, he says, I absolutely don't share his views on those points. It's like any ordinary journalist would say, listen, like I said, can we cut the bullshit? He said this, he said that, the other thing, right? Start with, do his clarifications, according to his clarifications, does that make him definitely not a pedophile apologist? Or is he still clearly a pedophile apologist, according to you, Roderic? Yes or no? Which one? Pick one, because it has to be, there's no like shade of gray there, right? It's one or the other. Either those points vindicate him, either his clarification vindicates him, or it doesn't. Do you, Roderic, think that Peter Tatchell's clarification vindicates him or doesn't vindicate him? Because then we can know, when you say, I absolutely don't share his views on those points, he either has the views or he doesn't have the views. A little bit of speaking of clarification from Sorka would be handy there, instead of the kind of mealy-mouthed little rat move that he did there, along with his scribbler Sorka. So he says, I would have seen him primarily as an advocate. It'd be funny if he did exactly what I was just saying. No, I'd be like, oh, okay. I would have seen him primarily as an advocate for LGBT rights in the UK in the 90s and 2002, but more recently, particularly vocal of the treatment of people in Russia and Chechnya. So they're giving him a little kind of, arse kissing there to just kind of distract the viewer or the reader, to be like, oh, it sounds like this guy's just standing up for gay people in Chechnya. I don't know what they're talking about. In a video posted on, and I know people were calling him a pedophile advocate because of all these things, but Tatchell says these things aren't true, and Roderic seems to half agree with that clarification. So, and he's just standing up for gays in Chechnya. So where are we? That's what they're trying to say here. In a video posted on Sunday on Twitter, actor John Connors said allegations about the minister and his association with Mr. Tatchell should be the political scandal of the year. Damn right. The actor accused the Green Party of inviting Mr. Tatchell, a quote pedophile apologist, to take part in Pride, and highlighted the campaigners' efforts to lower the age of consent to 14. Quote of John Connors: "This would be a national scandal. This should be a national scandal. Sorry, it's a disgrace." So yeah, Mr. O'Gorman and the Green Party had not invited Mr. Tatchell to take part. I saw someone say online today, he was holding a banner with Roderic O'Gorman. We can check pictures in a while. He's holding a banner with him, and he's in several pictures with him, carrying a banner together, right? You don't do that casually, do you? Who did invite him? I mean, if the Green Party or Roderic O'Gorman didn't invite him, then how did he end up there holding a Green Party or holding a Pride banner with him? And the Greens also tweeted at the time, delighted Peter Tatchell is here. Why did they tweet that? It's like, look, who did invite him then? But so on the age of consent, Mr. O'Gorman said he had no plans to bring it down from 17. I don't wish to lower the age of consent. The Green Party doesn't wish to lower the age of consent, and the government doesn't wish to lower the age of consent. I mean, yeah, you could say that, but also David Duke can say, I'm not racist, in that kind of way, right? You're not going to give him the same kind of benefit of the doubt there, are you? And it's like, you don't want to, you say you don't want to lower the age of consent. I mean, that's, it's hard to prove or disprove that. But like, do you want, like, okay, here'd be a good question to ask O'Gorman as a kind of a litmus test. Say, Minister O'Gorman, you're the children's minister. Congratulations. Great guy. Well done. You have this scandal, which you're saying is a nothing burger and it's all an attack on you. Fair enough. Okay. You say this, you say that. You say you don't want to lower the age of consent. David Duke says he's not racist, etc. But let's just think of a litmus test here. There was a scandal last year, Glitterhole. They are what's the word? An obscene, what's the word for it? A lewd. Lewd is too light a word. Graphically obscene, sexually obscene drag queen group by night. You get the gist. And by day, they go to read to children in a library about being drag queens, as drag queens. And they call themselves Glitterhole by night, with an arse cheeks as their logo. and they call themselves the very same thing by day when they're reading to children. Glitterhole. Everybody, kids, give a big clap for Glitterhole in the library. Teacher, what does Glitterhole mean? You know, that kind of thing, right? It was cancelled, needless to say, in spite of the Irish Times and everybody trying to kind of defend them. It was cancelled. Parents got wind of it. They were like, what's going on here? The public got wind of it. They were like, this is disgusting and a complete disgrace. And the library were like, cancel. They had to cancel. Ask, you know, O'Gorman. He's in this scandal now. He's a big LGBT advocate, so he's perfectly poised to have. He should have a say on this. We want to know your opinion. Do you support that story hour being cancelled? Were you in support of it yourself, or were you against it? Did you think that being cancelled was a disgrace? Did you think that being cancelled was a homophobic disgrace, etc., and that it should go ahead? Not only should that one have gone ahead, but many more should go ahead. And it would be a great thing, wouldn't it be great? Give us an answer on that, because it's kind of one or the other on that particular scenario, which is very, you know, people have their opinions on that. We want to know your opinion. Should it have been cancelled? Or is it good that it was cancelled? Or is it a disgrace that it was cancelled? Which one? That'd be a nice question to ask him, just to give because the public are kind of getting at something here a little bit. This kind of kid sexuality stuff, Peter Tatchell, age of consent, 9-year-olds enjoying being raped, stuff like that. So we're going to take a little slice of it here in the idea of like LGBT advocacy crossing over into the inappropriate with children. And I'm not pointing the finger at gays, you know, in that kind of way, but you get the point. It being used as an excuse, same way Peter Tatchell, some might say, uses it as an excuse. Which one is it? Give us your take on drag queen story, glitter hole in a library full of kids. Give us your take on that. That's a perfect litmus test for you, sir. Because I know you can say you don't want to lower the age of consent. I mean, we can all say, you know, I'm not this, I'm not that, I don't believe that. Yeah, it's easy. Words are easy. But just give us a definitive statement. Go on. Because he'd be under pressure from his people, his LGBT people and his kind of support base and stuff like that, to not condemn that. And that's the point. He was under pressure from his support base and a certain segment of society, not particularly just gay people, etc. But this kind of lobby, we'll say. Yeah, and he would be caught between two things, and that's what this is. The reason he spent a week not talking about this is because his people, even if you could fully prove, obviously Tatchell has his little kind of like weasel escapes, but let's say it was more concrete on Tatchell. Let's say more stuff came out and it was like, actually the allegations that he is, you know, straight up a pedophile apologist is unquestionable. I think it's already unquestionable, but let's say it came out and like he says it straight up, right? I still think Roderic would be under pressure from a big constituent support block of his to not cuck, to say, don't do it. Same way to be like, don't say that the glitter hole thing was wrong. And that's really at the heart of it. It's like, to be honest, is that, you know, and when a situation like this comes up, you know, I'm naive to say it, but if there were such thing as a legitimate journalist that he would answer questions to, that journalist would bring up examples like this and go, let's just run through a list. You know, if someone said, you know, it'd be like with a so-called racist, someone might say genocide, for or against, you know, this kind of thing, right? This kind of like accusations of malevolent intent, you know, people would go down that road and kind of use things. More kind of likely, someone might say, okay, you're against immigration, you think demographics are an issue. Would you be in favor of forced deportations? Obviously, that's touches a nerve, right? A lot of people would say, well, that's a very controversial and mean thing to do or something like that. So you would say, listen, let's just cut to the chase here. I know you're saying you're against immigration, but you're not racist and you don't hold anything against anyone, and you know all this kind of stuff, and you like immigrants, but you just want less immigration. Well, let's just test you out here. What would you do with asylum seekers who show up on boats? Would you kick them out? Would you deport people who were living here? And then they might say, well, maybe if people were here illegally, and then they would go, but what about kids who were here illegally? Would you do it to kids? They would do this kind of stress test of like, you're being accused of a certain inner belief. So what I'm going to do is stress test your take on that. That's what I'm doing. And there's no effort to do it here. Drag queen story or glitterhole, for or against. This kind of like rapid fire. That would be nice. And that would be a better way of getting to the heart of what he really believes than just being like him saying, I don't wish to lower the age of consent. I kind of condemn or distance myself from Tatchell, but I kind of don't as well, whatever. So anyway, back to the article. Last week, former journalist Gemma O'Doherty tweeted a screenshot of a photo of the Irish actor who had recreated the famous Goya painting Saturn devouring his son. Excuse me. Which the minister had retweeted. Another day of sordid revelations, wrote O'Doherty before calling the minister to step down. A number of Twitter users accused Mr. O'Gorman of supporting Satanism. Honestly, I think accusing people of Satanism. Well, I don't know. Say what you like. I mean, I get it. But like, what they're trying to do is kind of like, most people, when they hear that people are accusing someone of Satanism, they'll think of the kind of pearl clutching Christian, and I don't have anything against pearl clutching Christians, particularly. They're not high on my list of enemies at all, right? But the kind of is it Ned Flanders' wife or the minister, the preacher guy in The Simpsons, the one who says think of the children and it's devils and the moral panic kind of stuff, right? They're trying to. Red Squirrel says, why are you defending gays? I'll be honest with you here. It's one of those things where, and I don't mean to be like, you're anonymous, whatever, but sincerely, I know you'd like me to come out with the most pure and based rhetoric imaginable, right? And all of this, but I'm trying to go to a demo on. Oh, not me. Okay, never mind. Children moral panic. See, what I would say is like, I'm not even going to say like anything about calling it Satanism, but like, listen, the picture of the Goya painting and the recreation of it with this crappy, cosmopolitan comedian is it's. I'm not going to call it Satanism and go, this is they're all bloodthirsty and sitting around in a thing and all that. I would just say that's just like, and horrible actually. It's very much this kind of like, I killed my kid in an abortion and I'm delighted, and this kind of like, this like Glitterhole did exactly the same stuff. They would have like babies coming out of bellies with like umbilical cords and kind of innards, right, going on, like with the hanging out of a cut open womb and stuff like that. And it's like a joke. It seems to be a trend in this kind of feminist LGBT community or something, right? That there's something hilarious about that, or what? And it's like, you don't even need to call it Satanism or that there's a plot, underground plot or anything, to just say that actually is malevolent and disgusting and weird and gross, and it's hard not to say satanistic. Actually, it's kind of it's misanthropic and disgusting, and most people would think so. If I were to show that to most women I know in my life, just say, what do you think of that? They'd be like, that's fucking disgusting. Who the fuck, excuse my language, they'd be like, disgusting. They Chime says, "Don't worry myself." Is that with the language? Maybe with the language. I mean, it is a lowering act to curse. I definitely agree. Maybe I'm just a bit tired, but so let's go on with it, right? Asked to respond to calls for his resignation because of his association with Mr. Tatchell, Mr. O'Gorman said he would not respond to individual online posts. Okay. The minister has said he said he has a, quote, track record of working to implement child protection policies, unquote, through his work on school management boards and his 7 years as Green Party justice spokesman. Quote, the protection of the vulnerable has been central to everything I've done in politics, and now as Minister for Children as well as Minister for Disability, Equality and Integration, child protection will continue to be central to my work. So he's basically getting a blank check here to just say whatever he wants. Mr. O'Gorman said he had found the online allegations difficult to deal with, but was conscious that, quote, everyone in politics has to accept a level of scrutiny, unquote, and he accepts this. Well, in that case, just accept it. You're not. You're calling everyone a faceless, horde, online horde or whatever. It's insulting. And, enjoy the protest at the weekend, by the way. I'd hope that the ridiculous Can you hear me? I'm sorry about that. Let me know if I'm back. Someone says Antifa have attacked Garrod's stream. No, fortunately not. I think I'm back. I'm not sure. Am I back? Yeah, just let me know. So it's weird because I'm talking to myself the whole time anyway, but when I'm gone, then it really becomes apparent as I'm talking to myself physically in the room. But thanks, I'm back. Brilliant. So this Irish Times piece is basically over, and I'm taking this as kind of a given for the rest of the articles as a kind of sampling. So, it's important to highlight what these groups are doing, and also, these people are putting out misinformation. It's important to highlight what these groups are doing and also give a complete clarification. Okay, I read that bit. Yeah, that's not a complete clarification. It's really not. And his level of contempt and all that. I mean, if he actually did a good job here, I would be like, yeah, let's just pack up the protest on Saturday at 1 o'clock outside the Dole. Let's pack that up and just, there's no point now. I mean, he's pretty much owned us on that now. He's kind of apologized and he's kind of distanced and he's been gracious and humble and respectful to the critique and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, no. No. This issue is very much still alive, and I don't know. It's like it's just complete contempt for the public. I saw some Fine Gael arsehole asking for John Connors to be cancelled. It's proper. You have this little shite, this suck up sycophant, Fine Gael, kind of youngish Fine Gael guy who's like, I'm in a photo with Leo Varadkar at the Pride Parade, and he's asking for John Connors. I don't want to overemphasize the identity thing, but and whatever, but the guy's criticizing him as a gay Fine Gaeler. John Connors is a sound out traveller. They're both just people and all that stuff. But like, there is something about this Fine Gael scumbag trying to get John Connors cancelled. Yeah, I don't know. There's a bit of a class contempt there, I think, underneath it all. But yeah, there's a few more little things, right? And I'll see if I do a screen share, I'll just totally mess it up. So I'll just read it to you. You have Julie Bindel, right? Who's a famous British feminist activist, has from a few years ago there, 2018. She says on Twitter, thread regarding Tatchell's child abuse apologism. Peter Tatchell wrote an obituary of his friend Ian Campbell Dunn, who was one of the two founders of the Paedophile Information Exchange. He publicly denied he was a paedophile, claiming he had become involved with Paedophile Information Exchange because he believed in supporting minorities, yet he allowed his flat to be used as a mailbox for a journal called Minor Problems, which billed itself as a radical review for free intergenerational and child sexuality. When this was exposed in the Scottish press, Dunn threatened to sue, but then he quietly dropped it. She goes on and on about these Tatchell's connections and kind of what he's kind of implicated with. You have, there's loads. I mean, just for example, you have the Guardian and the Telegraph in England. Telegraph is an article just from a few years ago. It's an op-ed by this woman called Eileen Fairweather. She said, "We on the left," so she's of the left herself. We on the left lacked the courage to be branded, quote, homophobic, so we just ignored it. I wish I hadn't. Eileen Fairweather was among those who failed to condemn the Paedophile Information Exchange in the 70s. So again, it's just like the church, where you say, listen, if a little boy comes up and says, I have something I want to tell you there about the priest who I've been seeing in confession or whatever, right? Something's gone on. And the child says something. You don't just say, how dare he? He's a little shite. He's a troublemaker. He's a this and that. His parents are filling his head full of stories because they don't like the priest. Or, you don't do that. You go, okay, now, given everything that's happened, there's a little bit of a history here. So therefore, let's not do the same thing again and repeat. Let's not, repeat old mistakes. And as she says here, we on the left lack the courage to be branded homophobic, so we just ignored it. I wish I hadn't. She was in this milieu and she turned a blind eye, her and her peers turned a blind eye to the Paedophile Information Exchange because, for the very reason that they said, we don't want to be called homophobic here, pointing at this thing. Now, Roderic O'Gorman, I'm not saying the two are the very same, but Roderic O'Gorman is using the same thing. Do you get me? He's doing the same thing. In an instance where people are going, we've concerns about a legitimate paedophile apologist or, alleged and all that, who you're associated with, etc. And your first response is to call everybody who has that concern a homophobe. That's exactly what the Paedophile Information Exchange did. Now, am I saying you're in the Paedophile Information Exchange or you're akin to that? Whatever, right? I'm not. But you're doing the very same thing. And that, aside from your association with Tatchell and the ifs and buts and the ins and outs of that, so to speak, besides that altogether, above and beyond that, you are doing something which is dangerous. you're taking legitimate concerns about child abuse and ascribing it to something which is taboo. And you're doing that in a weaponized fashion to defend yourself and your peers and your milieu from all criticism. That in itself, even if the Tatchell thing were completely resolved in itself as an original concern, the way you have responded to it tells us even more worrying things. Because what about the next thing? What if, in theory, I ask you, Roderic, what if in theory something else came out about it, another association you have, which is even more direct, and there's a little bit more on the kind of direct, straight up evidence on it type of thing, and people go, hey, we demand either a resignation or a complete explanation or whatever, you know what I mean? We want we want you to bury yourself to the public on this stuff and be answerable and all that kind of stuff fully, and not just run to your Irish Times people. You need to genuinely answer the questions people have, or leave office. How are we to know that you will not come out in that instance and say homophobia, everybody, newspapers, line up, whatever? That itself is worrying. You are defensive on this instead of open, transparent, and engaged with the public. You hold contempt for the public on this matter, and you ignore it and you cover it up with accusations of homophobia. That's not good, and it's not to be trusted. So what you're telling us is, if ever a concern about pedophilia comes up and it has a Venn diagram, a kind of it relates to a gay issue, a gay movement, a gay person, a gay whatever, that it'll be covered up, or it could be, at least it could be covered up, or it could be defended against with the word homophobia. That's not a good situation now. What you should have said is that I don't agree with what they're saying about me. I think it's bad what they're saying about me. I think it's a stretch. I think everything else. But what I will say is that not for one moment should someone who has concerns raised about them on a very legitimate issue for, let's face it, a legit reason, right? There's a legit reason at the very least for people to be concerned. He should say, not for a minute should someone be able to wave the flag of, oh, that's homophobic, to defend against legitimate accusations. People should have to answer questions straight up, especially when they're the Minister for Children and they have this association. They should not be able to hide behind homophobia. Even if he said, like, I think some of these people are homophobic in their basis on this, but I also don't think someone should be able to hide behind the skirt of homophobia. Let's be clear about that. Going forward, we will not tolerate in the gay community people weaponizing homophobia to defend themselves against concerns, whether they are founded or unfounded. I condemn homophobia, but I condemn hiding behind a taboo, hiding behind a thing like this. In the same way as priests had this kind of elite status where they could say, I'm a priest, I wouldn't do anything wrong. People are anti-clergy. They're communists. They're rabble-rousers. They're heathens, whatever, atheists. I don't know. A priest shouldn't have been able to say that these people are troublemaking outcasts for impugning my good reputation. And they're only doing it because I'm a priest and they hate God. It's like, that would be shitty. Sorry, excuse the language. And so is what you're doing. So on Saturday, I think your mea culpa wasn't a mea culpa. I don't think you clarified nor apologized nor anything in this explanation. You didn't. So I'm protesting on that. And even if you had equivocated better, I don't like the defensiveness. I don't like the fact that the public aren't allowed to have these concerns. And at no point did you say, no, that's fair. That's fair. You go, I get it. I totally get that. And like all he said is that there's misinformation. It's this, it's that, it's bad, it's evil people and whatever. And the only thing is that it might kind of get out. And this misinformation, some people, that's all he said. That's the furthest he went on it. He should have said, I mean, look, I'm Minister for Children. I stood with the guy. I didn't know the guy had those points of view. I know this Tatchell guy denies it, but there's a little bit one too many, and which is what my critics were saying, and I can see that. Tatchell's done good work, but I can see it. I can see what they're getting at. I mean, like I said, let's cut the bullshit, right? I can see what they're getting at. Had I known that, I 100% wouldn't have taken the picture with him. If I'm going to be a children's gay activist or whatever, and I'm going to be Minister for Children, then totally I get it. Just like any good apology, everybody respects a good kind of clarification and apology, where someone comes out and they're not hanging themselves, they're not prostrating themselves, but they go, there's a way to do it, and you just kind of go, I understand. That's where you start. I mean, every PR kind of person knows this, right? You go, I understand. I get it. I get how that looks, and I completely understand. That's usually how a kind of a mea culpa or a clarification / apology type of thing works. They go, I get it. That's a completely legitimate thing. That came up, and I understand that would look bad in that way. Now, I was just at a thing. I took a picture, but those views are let it always be clear that any kind of thing and homophobia is no defense. No defense. Whether you're a priest, whether you're an LGBT advocate, whether you're a coach, whether you're a whatever, let no man stand behind some kind of high priest community taboo status. Let that never happen. Now, on the other hand, I took the picture. I didn't know the guy. Okay. But both are true. I mean, if he said something like that, I'd be kind of blown away. I'd be like, I can say no more on this, to be honest. Wow. I kind of would probably just go, okay, fair play. But he didn't do that. And that's, I'm belaboring the point, but that's it. Okay. So, the point I wanted to make is that between the Telegraph, there's more. There's like the Guardian one as well. Julie, what's her name? Julie Bindel, same woman. She says, her headline in the Guardian, she says, gay men need to talk straight about paedophilia. She says, rather than campaign on the age of consent, it might silence anti-gay bigots if some gay men spoke out against atrocities towards children. So, like, again, the idea that, like, it's well documented. People saying, listen, you can't allow this. You can't allow this, I'm gay, that's homophobia, to be an excuse. There can't be one rule for straight people and another rule for gay people. There can't be one rule for the straight community or just, heteronormativity. There can't be one rule for straight people and then another rule vigorously put forth by certain LGBT activists, such as Roderic O'Gorman and some of his peers. There can't. It can't. It's like, no, you can't have double standard like that. That's it. If it were a straight minister for children, and his straight friend had the same quotes attributed to him, like Tatchell. Basically, if Roderic O'Gorman were straight and Tatchell was a straight, like, activist about the environment or something like that, and the same things came out about Tatchell, but in this kind of straight context. I mean, what would O'Gorman say? I mean, if enough heat were turned up on him that he had to respond, he'd say, he'd have to just say, yeah, no, I mean, the guy said sexual relations and he wrote a chapter in the book and he this or that. I mean, gosh, I didn't know any of that stuff. I mean, I know the guy's not going to come out straight up and say he's a pedophile advocate or apologist, but, like, I mean, I understand. I'm Minister for Children now, and the public have seen this. This guy says that girls at the age of 9 can enjoy this, and he wrote, and he was friends with the guy who was pro, this pedophile relationships with little girls group. So, like, yeah, I condemn. And he wouldn't. What would he say? He'd come out and say, "You're being." He might not have something to say. Yeah. It would be like, well, yeah, in that situation, the guy would just come out and say, I mean, whatever. I condemn those views and whatever. The fact that this guy is attaching it to his kind of turtle shell of homophobia, gay, is disgraceful. It really is. And it needs to be talked about more. We can't have people like, for example, I've talked about it before. Panty Bliss is Panty Bliss. It's weird to even say it. Rory O'Neill or whatever, the drag queen, has a pub with, I've said it before, he has the graphic written on the pub, one of Panty Bar or whatever it's called. It says butthole. Sorry, lads. It says butthole on a electricity box, graffitied or kind of stenciled onto the establishment. Again, you know, if it said, you know, if it was a lads bar, do you know what I mean? A lads bar, lads go there, lads bar, like working class men or bikers or, you know, just kind of real testosterone zone, right? And that bar there, and it says, instead of saying butthole, it says PUS hole, right? It says that. I mean, people would just be like, that's disgusting. That's disgusting. It's insulting. It's rude. I'm trying to walk past you with my children. You absolute freak. Take that shit down. Like, honestly, like, I'm painting it myself. The guards, I'm calling the guard. I don't know. This is obscene. I'm trying to walk past here with my 2 kids, and they're looking to their right. They're literally at their eye level and reading this. That's absolutely disgusting. That's sick. But it's if you were to say that about Panty Bar, you're a homophobe. No. So everywhere from this kind of disgustingness, street level, to this kind of pedophile apologism and defending and being defensive and hiding inside the turtle shell, not on. Roderic O'Gorman needs to answer for that. He needs to answer for whether is homophobia a legitimate defense for. Is homophobia alone, or are accusations of homophobia an automatic defense from legitimate concerns for a public servant, indeed a minister for children? Answer. We need to sort that one out, I would say. Any more? I mean, there's loads. Look, there's going to be a long week. I've kept you long enough tonight, lads. I see someone saying good night. Who's saying good night? Kelly. Okay. If you're still here, good night, Kelly. I didn't want to miss you on that one. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate it. And you know where I'm going with this one. Same to the rest of you. I'm going to focus on this kind of general, broad topic for like sex ed and some of that kind of stuff. I need to finally really have a look at it this week. So if you have anything, send it on to me. I'll take a look. And back tomorrow night. So thanks everybody for watching, and have a good one. Sleep well. Ihuwa.